How to turn your scrap fabric into earrings or decorations. A step-by-step tutorial with free sewing pattern. Hi sewers, welcome to my studio. I'm Sasha, I'm a fashion designer and teacher, and today I have a short and sweet tutorial showing you how to make these super fun and really easy 3D fabric shapes in 2 different styles. I'll be showing you how to turn these little shapes into earrings, but as it's Christmas time when I'm releasing this, they'd also work really well as decorations for your tree, so I'll show you how to finish them in that way too. This is a really quick and easy project that's beginner friendly and will take you less than half an hour from start to finish. So it's ideal for last minute gifts and it's great for using up your fabric scraps too. The shapes to make these are really simple, but I decided to make a sewing pattern to speed up the process and help you get the dimensions and angles of them just right. The pattern is totally free and you can download it by following the link in the description of this video. So let's go through the materials you'll need for the project and then dive into a step-by-step tutorial for each of the 2 designs. Materials needed. For this project, you'll need your fabric, which I'll explain in more detail in the next chapter, matching thread for your sewing machine, as well as a slightly thicker thread if you have one. This thicker thread will form the decoration hanging string or earring hook connector, so you can also use something fun and decorative here if you'd like. And if you don't have any thicker threads, feel free to improvise here with either regular sewing thread doubled up, string or yarn. You'll then need sewing pins, sharp fabric scissors, a chopstick or wooden skewer, or something similar which we'll use to help us turn the shapes through, a chalk pencil or fabric marker, or a regular pencil instead if that's all you have to hand, and a ruler. And if you're making these into earrings, you'll also need some earring hooks, which are really cheap and easy to find online, and a hand sewing needle with a large enough eye to fit your thicker thread. I created this project for a sewing machine, but it could be hand-stitched fairly easily as the pieces are quite small, and you'll need an iron to press as you go along too. Fabric choices. This project is perfect for using up scrap fabric and it will work with lots of different types, but I would avoid anything with stretch, fabrics that are very heavy, and any fabric that's very slippy or drapey, as you need it to have a little bit of structure to it to hold the shapes. However, you can stiffen softer fabrics with a little bit of interfacing to make them more suitable, which is what I did with the pink and blue satins in these 2 versions. The other fabrics I've used here are madras silk, lame, linen and polyester lining, and any light to midweight cotton would work, as well as light wools, chambray, raw silks and dupion, or even organza for a beautiful sheer version. So do have a play around with the leftover fabric in your stash and get creative. You can use the same fabric for the outer and inner on both designs, but I think they both look nicest with a contrast to really show off the shapes and add a little bit of interest. For Dangle A, you'll need 2 pieces of fabric that are around 6 inches squared per shape, one for the outer and one for the inner, so 2 of each for a pair of earrings. And for Dangle B, your 2 pieces of fabric need to be around 4.5 inches squared. Printing out the sewing pattern. First, print out your pattern, being careful to print at 100% scale and checking the scale guide on the first page against your tape measure to be sure. Then cut around the edge of the 3 pattern pieces and you'll have 1 piece marked for Dangle A and 2 pieces for Dangle B. How to sew Dangle A. Start by layering up your fabric pieces. I am going to show you how to make a matching pair in this tutorial. So I have 2 pieces of my outer fabric with the right sides facing on top of 2 pieces of my inner fabric, also with the right sides facing each other. Then lay the pattern piece onto the fabric and pin into place, matching up the grain if you can, although sometimes this can be a little bit difficult when working with scrap fabric. Then cut out your pieces as close to the edge of the pattern paper as possible and mark the 3 notches on the pattern by using the tip of your scissors only to cut a small snip of about 2 to 3 millimeters into the edge of your fabric pieces. Then place a pin through the punch hole marking and carefully unpin one side of the pattern so you can flip the piece and use the pin as a guide to mark the front of your inner cloth only with a chalk dot at the pinpoint. Then unpin the rest of the pattern piece and mark the reverse of your fabric pieces with a chalk cross if they look quite similar ruler on both sides to keep things clear. Then put your outer pieces to one side and lay your inner pieces out on the table with the right sides facing up. We're now going to draw the same lines we have on the pattern here onto the right side of our inner fabric pieces with chalk. First, locate the 3 snipped notches and add a little chalk mark next to them to make them easier to see. Then use your ruler to join up the notch marks on either side of the circle, followed by the notch at the top which joins to the punch hole mark in the middle that we marked earlier with the pin. So for earrings, you should now have 2 pieces that look like this with the markings as a mirror image of each other. For decorations, the direction of the markings isn't important. Fold each piece in half along the longer chalk line and then fold in half again at the punch hole mark in the middle. Then chop away about 5mm at the tip of the fold to create a diamond-shaped hole in the middle of each piece. Then take your 2 outer pieces and lay them right side up, then lay your 2 inner pieces right side down on top of them, matching up the notches here if you want to be really precise with your grain placement, and pin them together all the way around the edge with the pins facing inwards towards the middle of the circle so we can leave them in when sewing. And we're going to sew them together around the outer edge of each circle. Use a straight stitch for this with a length of 2 and a seam allowance of 5mm, taking care if you're a beginner to follow the edge of the pieces and keep your line as smooth as possible, as sewing around a tight curve can be a little challenging. And when you get back to the point where you started, overlap your first stitches by a couple of centimetres to seal the line. So it should look like this at the start and end point. Press the pieces flat, then trim down the seam allowance slightly by 1mm or 2, so you're left with an even allowance of about 3 to 4mm. Then take your chopstick or something similar and use it to help you push your outer fabric out through the hole that we made in the inner fabric to turn your pieces the right way round. Then use the end of the chopstick to go back in through the hole and carefully push out the edges of the circle to get a nice smooth shape. Then press flat with your iron using plenty of steam and pressure. Next, for earrings, cut 2 50cm lengths of your thicker thread, or for decorations you'll need 1 30cm length per shape. Then flip your pieces to the reverse and we're going to fold in half along the longer chalk line here. But first take your length of thicker thread and fold it in half to form a loop at one end. Then place it inside the fabric fold so that the loop is hidden inside towards the larger segment away from the diagonal chalk line, and place a pin through the diagonal chalk line to hold it into place, and repeat in reverse for the other side. So take a moment to check that your 2 pieces and the direction of your thicker thread placement now look exactly like this, and we're going to sew along the chalk lines here. Take care moving your pieces to the machine and check that the loop of your thicker thread is still in the middle before you start sewing. Then starting at the middle where we have the hole in the inner fabric, use a straight stitch with a length of 2 and a back stitch at the beginning and the end to sew through the chalk line. Then bring your pieces onto the table and pull the tail ends of the thicker thread to turn the pieces the right way round and into shape like magic. How to sew Dangle B. First, cut your fabric. For earrings, you'll need a pair each of both the outer and inner pieces, or if you're making a decoration, you can reduce this to 1 of each, or cut a few in a stack if you want to make several. Then take your 2 inner pieces and lay them on the table wrong side up, and follow the fold line on the pattern to fold the piece in half with the right side facing out as shown, and press into place with your iron. Then fold in half a second time, bringing the 2 points to meet, and press into place along the open edge only, so the fold in the middle stays nice and bouncy like this, and repeat for the other inner piece if you're making earrings. Next, take one of your outer pieces and lay it on the table with the right side facing up, next to the sewing pattern for reference. Then take one of your inner pieces and lay it on top so that the 2 raw edges of the inner piece are matching to the raised corner of the outer piece as shown, and add a pin to hold into place. Then cut 2 50cm lengths of your thicker thread for earrings, or for decorations you'll need 1 30cm length per shape. Fold the thread in half to form a loop at one end and place on top of the outer piece as shown, following the fold line on the pattern, taking a moment to make sure that the loop of your thread is in the same position as mine here. Then fold in half where the thread is and add a few pins to hold into place, and repeat in exactly the same way for your second pieces if you're making earrings. So your pieces should now look like this, with the loop of thread poking out at the pointed end. And we're going to sew the pieces together along these two sides, starting at the pointed tip of the shape with a backstitch. Use a straight stitch for this with a length of 2 and a seam allowance of 5mm. And when you get to the corner, lower your needle into the cloth so you can lift the press-a-foot and use the needle as a pivot to spin the piece around to continue sewing in a continuous line until you reach the opening with the tail ends of the thicker thread. So your pieces should now look like this. Then trim down your seam allowances to about 2 to 3mm, being careful not to chop through the loop of your thicker thread, and cut a little bit extra away from the corner in the middle. Then pull the tail ends of the thread to turn the pieces the right way around through the opening, which may take a little bit of wiggling if your fabric is a little bit stiff or interfaced like mine here. Then use a skewer or something similar to push the middle of the outer fabric triangle out into a crisp point, and repeat for the other side if you're making earrings. So your pieces should now look like this. Then at roughly the halfway point of each outer triangle, pinch the fabric in half and tuck the open end inside up towards the point at the other side, and wiggle your finger inside the fold of the inner piece until it looks like this. And here's me doing the same for the second earring, so you can watch that process again. Use a skewer or something similar to push out the tips of the shapes if needed. Then make sure the little points at the bottom of the shapes are sitting nicely, and press into shape at the base only, working the tip of your iron inside the inner fabric to get a nice crisp shape at the bottom. A couple of ways to finish your dangle shapes. To finish the dangles as decorations, simply tie a knot in the thicker threads at the top of the shapes and cut away the excess, and they're ready to hang wherever you please. Or to finish as earrings, take 2 earring hooks, then chop the 2 ends of the thicker thread down to the same length and thread both the ends together through the eye of a large hand sewing needle. Take the needle through the end of one of the earring hooks, then sew through the top of the dangle and back through the earring hook a couple of times, leaving a small loose column of thread between the two rather than pulling them tight together. Then, leaving the needle attached, take the ends of the thread and wrap it tightly around the column to create a little stalk, and stitch through the top of the dangle a couple of times to secure. And finish by taking the needle back down through the tip of the shape and push it all the way down so you can pull it out through the bottom and cut away the leftover thread. So the finished connection will look like this, with a little stalk of thread that allows the dangles to have some movement when you wear them. And repeat for the second earring. And do feel free to have a play around with other uses for these fab little shapes too. I'd love to see what you come up with. Thanks so much for watching. If you're sewing along at home, I hope you have an amazing new pair of earrings or some really fun decorations in front of you right now and you're feeling super proud of yourself. Seeing the pieces you create of my patterns is one of my favourite things, so please do tag me if you share any photos of your make, and you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Sasha__Starlight. And if you had fun with this project, you might enjoy my Batwing blouse sewing pattern, which is also free to download. And I also have detailed tutorials for adjustable palazzo pants, a blanket coat transformation project, fitted dungarees, and a super swooshy swing coat as a few examples. So head to my channel for more videos if any of those take your fancy. And as a little sneak peek, my next pattern release will be for this elegant and easy, adjustable multi-way dress with detachable sleeves. But for now, I hope your new creations bring you or a loved one all the joy for many years to come, and I'll see you next time.